You can be miserable no matter what you have, and you can be euphoric having nothing. We all know it's true. In fact, is it possible to learn to let, for example, all hell could be breaking loose around you, and you could just be sitting in a chair in this centered space, all hell breaking loose, and you could still feel great? Is that possible? Yes or no? Yes or no? Sure, but you and I live in a Western culture. Well, if you sit and bliss out, people come and take your furniture.
Like, I know leaders who never cry, who are very vulnerable and transparent. And I know leaders who cry all the time, who are just BSers. You know, like, and if there's, you know, vulnerability is great. Faux vulnerability or like fake vulnerability, because it seems to be, vulnerability seems to be a thing right now, that pisses people off.
So the first thing is you gotta accept the fact that everybody judging you judging yourself, it's okay to not be exactly like everybody else. It's not, you know, it's okay to not follow the crowd. So that's the one thing I would tell people is, don't worry about what everybody else is doing, worry about what you're doing. Focus on what you're doing, because everybody else out there, everybody judging you, they also have problems themselves.
For your ability to show up and be your best, there are probably things in your work every single day that become monotonous. There are probably things that seem like we're doing the same thing over and over. Do we have to do these stretches today? But every little thing that we do makes up the standard that causes you to understand what it looks like for you to be your best. And oftentimes it's doing those things that are the most very basic in order to know what it truly means for us to give our very best.
When you're standing at the fucking foot of the mountain, bro, it seems impossible. You're like, oh, dude, that's way too simple. That's not really how it's done. You mean you just execute today, and then you do it again tomorrow, and then the next day. And people think like that sounds overly simple, but it might be. But it's how it works. There's not a magical thing to it. There's no magic to it. The only fucking magic to it is the momentum that you create that helps you push you even faster towards where you're going.
This is the trap that most of us are in. Most of us know what we could do to change things for the better. And we spend our time and our energy talking ourselves out of doing those things. And the other thing that I convince people of, because this is so true, it's the littlest stuff. The little things make all the difference. And I could spend hours with you explaining the science of confidence and explaining the science of risk and explaining the science behind courage and explaining habit loops and how they get encoded in your brain. You don't need to know any of that because you're not applying for a PhD in psychology. I have done the work, and what I know is that true change comes down to 5-second windows.
Take ownership. Take extreme ownership. Don't make excuses. Don't blame any other person or any other thing. Get control of your ego. Don't hide your delicate pride from the truth. Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad. Take ownership of your mistakes, take ownership of your shortfalls, take ownership of your problems, and then take ownership of the solutions that will get those problems solved.
Just begin to do the things you tell yourself you're going to do. You begin to build self-confidence, which is this reputation with yourself. So ask yourself a question right now. What is one thing right now, one promise I can make to myself that I'm going to begin to keep starting this minute? And begin to do it. It could be how often I'm going to pick up a book and read it. But you begin to stack things you commit to do, and then you deliver on them and you acknowledge them to yourself. You're in the process of building self-confidence.
Well, when you get knocked down, stay down there for a minute. Understand why you lost. So every time I lost, I stayed down for a second. Minutes, hours, days, weeks. But when I stood up, I was different.
And so distractions are the enemy of greatness. And so the enemy is very good at distracting us from what matters most. And so often we see things that are appealing. They look shiny, they look nice. We want that, we want this. We want to go out with friends. Some people move towards drugs and alcohol. And all these things are a distraction, keeping us from what matters most.
The issue is when we are so focused on the next rung the next step, the next goal, that we become blind to the blessings of today. My friends, our time is finite, and how we choose to spend it matters profoundly. I'm not suggesting we put the latter away, but it's time to pay attention to how we spend our days and where exactly we are climbing.